Most people wake up every morning hoping life will somehow change, yet they walk into the day carrying the same habits, the same thinking, and the same excuses that created yesterday. They wait for motivation, for the right moment, for someone to believe in them first. But here's the truth: few are willing to face life doesn't change until you do. Not when circumstances improve, not when luck shows up, not when conditions become perfect, but when you decide that who you are today is no longer good enough for where you want to go. Rebuilding yourself is not about fixing what is broken on the outside. It's about confronting what has been ignored on the inside. It's about admitting that comfort has cost you growth, that delay has cost you opportunity, and that silence has cost you potential. Every unkept promise, every postponed decision, every moment of settling has been shaping you into someone you didn't consciously choose to become. The powerful part is this: nothing has gone wrong beyond repair. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply standing at a moment of choice. And that choice is not about becoming someone new. It's about reclaiming the person you were always capable of being, starting right now. Personal responsibility is the moment a person stops negotiating with reality and starts owning it. It is the clear understanding that whatever your life looks like today is connected, directly or indirectly, to the choices you have made, the habits you have practiced, and the standards you have accepted. This idea is uncomfortable for many people because it removes excuses, but it is also the most empowering idea a human being can accept. The instant you take responsibility, you regain control. Until then, life feels like something that keeps happening to you instead of something you are shaping. Most people waste years blaming circumstances, people, luck, the economy, their upbringing, or timing. While all of those things influence life, none of them determine your future unless you allow them to. Responsibility is not about denying hardship. It is about refusing to let hardship define you. Two people can face the same situation and end up in completely different places because one accepts responsibility and the other waits for rescue. Waiting keeps you stuck. Responsibility forces movement. When you take responsibility, you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What can I do with what I have?" That shift alone changes how you think, how you act, and how you respond to challenges. You begin to look for solutions instead of sympathy. You stop demanding fairness and start demanding growth from yourself. Life does not reward excuses, but it responds to ownership. Personal responsibility also means accepting that results are messengers. Your income, health, relationships, confidence, and discipline are not random outcomes. They are feedback. They reflect your daily decisions, spoken words, and repeated actions. Once you understand this, you stop being surprised by results and start being intentional about them. You realize that if you want better outcomes, you must become better at the cause. This principle does not require perfection. It requires honesty. Honesty about how you spend your time, what you tolerate, what you avoid, and what you postpone. Responsibility means admitting when you have been lazy, inconsistent, fearful, or distracted without turning that admission into self-hate. Self-blame weakens you. Self-responsibility strengthens you because it points to changeable behavior instead of permanent identity. Another powerful aspect of responsibility is that it removes dependency. When you stop expecting people to fix your life, motivate you, or believe in you before you act, you become internally driven. Your progress no longer depends on praise, permission, or perfect conditions. You move because you decided to move. This independence builds confidence, and confidence fuels further action. Responsibility also reshapes discipline. Instead of forcing yourself to do what is hard, you begin to see discipline as self-respect in action. You show up because you said you would. You follow through because your word matters to you. You stop negotiating with your weaker moods and start honoring your stronger decisions. This is where rebuilding truly begins, not with massive changes, but with keeping small promises to yourself. Many people fear responsibility because they think it means carrying the weight of the world. In reality, it lightens the load. Blame is heavy. Excuses are heavy. Waiting is heavy. Responsibility is clarity. It tells you where to work and what to improve. It shows you that even if you cannot control everything, you can always control your response, your effort, and your direction. Taking responsibility does not mean you had control over everything that happened in your past. It means you take control over what happens next. It means refusing to let yesterday's decisions become tomorrow's prison. It means recognizing that change begins the moment you stop explaining and start acting, the moment you stop defending where you are and start building where you want to go, the moment you accept that your future is not found in wishing, blaming, or waiting, but in choosing, adjusting, and doing day after day through conscious ownership of your thoughts, actions, and standards. Your philosophy is the invisible force guiding every decision you make, whether you are aware of it or not. It is the collection of beliefs, attitudes, assumptions, and expectations you carry into life, and over time it quietly shapes your results. People often focus on changing their environment, their income, or their relationships without realizing that none of those things will truly improve unless the thinking behind them improves first. Direction in life is not determined by desire alone. It is determined by the ideas you live by. A person's philosophy is formed through experiences, influences, culture, and repeated conclusions drawn over time. Some of these ideas are helpful, others are limiting, and many are inherited without examination. When someone believes that success is reserved for a few, effort decreases. When someone believes that failure defines them, risk disappears. When someone believes that time will fix everything, urgency fades. These beliefs operate silently, but they control behavior. Change the belief and behavior changes naturally. What makes philosophy so powerful is that it determines what you notice and what you ignore. Two people can hear the same advice and walk away with completely different interpretations because their internal philosophies filter meaning differently. One hears opportunity, the other hears inconvenience. One sees responsibility, the other sees burden. Life responds accordingly. Direction is not about knowing more information, it is about adopting better interpretations of information. When results are disappointing, the temptation is to look outward for the cause. But philosophy asks you to look inward and examine the lens through which you view effort, discipline, time, and value. If you believe small actions don't matter, you will avoid consistency. If you believe you must feel motivated before acting, you will wait endlessly. If you believe life owes you fairness, frustration becomes your companion. These beliefs don't shout, they whisper, and over time, they decide your path. Changing direction requires upgrading philosophy, not forcing behavior. Forced behavior collapses under pressure, but belief-driven behavior sustains itself. When you truly believe that your actions compound, you stop skipping small disciplines. When you believe that learning is more valuable than pride, you seek feedback instead of defending mistakes. When you believe that effort builds identity, work becomes meaningful rather than exhausting. A strong philosophy is practical, not emotional. It does not rely on mood or circumstance. It acknowledges that life will be challenging and still insists on responsibility, growth, and patience. It replaces entitlement with gratitude and replaces complaining with curiosity. Instead of asking why things are hard, it asks what skills must be developed. Instead of asking why progress is slow, it asks what habits need refining. Direction changes when philosophy shifts from convenience to commitment. Convenience leads to short-term comfort but long-term regret. Commitment accepts short-term discomfort for long-term gain. This shift is subtle but life-altering. It determines whether you read or scroll, whether you prepare or improvise, whether you build or drift. Philosophy decides whether you react to life or lead it. Your philosophy also defines your standards. Standards determine what you tolerate, and what you tolerate becomes your lifestyle. If your philosophy allows excuses, mediocrity feels acceptable. If it demands growth, stagnation becomes uncomfortable. People rarely rise above their standards because standards are tied directly to belief. Raise the belief and the standard follows. Direction is not changed by dramatic events, but by repeated alignment between belief and action. Once philosophy evolves, decisions become clearer. You no longer argue with yourself about what needs to be done. You act because it matches who you believe you are becoming. This internal alignment removes confusion and replaces it with momentum. Ultimately, life moves in the direction of your dominant philosophy. Not your goals, not your intentions, but the ideas you practice daily. When you refine those ideas, challenge outdated beliefs, and adopt principles that support growth, your direction changes naturally, consistently, and quietly through the choices you make every day, shaping your path through deliberate thinking rather than accidental living. Small disciplines are the quiet builders of every meaningful life. They rarely draw attention and they never create instant applause, yet over time they shape character, capability, and results more powerfully than any dramatic effort ever could. People often overestimate what can be achieved in a single burst of motivation and underestimate what can be achieved through simple actions repeated daily. Transformation does not arrive through grand gestures, it arrives through consistency in the ordinary. The power of small disciplines lies in their simplicity. They are actions so manageable that resistance has little ground to stand on. Reading a few pages, writing a single paragraph, saving a small amount, waking up slightly earlier, or choosing a healthier option once a day may seem insignificant in isolation. But life is not built in isolation. Every small action adds a vote toward the person you are becoming. When repeated, these votes accumulate into identity, and identity determines behavior. Small disciplines work because they bypass overwhelm. Large goals often paralyze people because the distance between where they are and where they want to be feels intimidating. Small disciplines shrink that distance into something approachable. Instead of asking for massive change, they ask for participation. Once participation becomes routine, progress becomes inevitable. Momentum does not come from intensity, it comes from reliability. Another reason small disciplines are so effective is that they build trust with yourself. Every time you do what you said you would do, even in a minor way, you reinforce self-belief. Confidence is not built by motivational speeches or external validation. It is built by kept promises. When you consistently follow through on small commitments, your self-respect increases, and with it your willingness to take on greater responsibility. Small disciplines also protect against emotional inconsistency. Motivation fluctuates, energy rises and falls, and circumstances change. Disciplines, when small enough, remain doable regardless of mood. You don't need to feel inspired to read one page or practice one skill. Over time, this reduces dependence on feelings and strengthens the habit of action. You learn to act because it is part of who you are, not because you feel like it in the moment. What makes small disciplines transformational is the compounding effect. Just as neglect compounds quietly into regret, disciplined actions compound into growth. One day of effort may not show visible results, but a year of effort reshapes ability and opportunity. This compounding works in every area of life: knowledge, health, relationships, finances, and mindset. The direction may be slow at first, but it is steady, and steady progress eventually becomes undeniable. Many people dismiss small disciplines because they seek dramatic change. They want results that feel significant quickly. However, significance is the outcome of accumulation, not the starting point. Small disciplines feel unimpressive because they operate beneath the surface. Like roots growing underground, they strengthen structure before anything visible appears. When growth finally shows, it looks sudden, but it was built patiently over time. Small disciplines also simplify decision-making. When actions are pre-decided as part of a routine, willpower is conserved. You no longer debate whether to act, you simply act. This reduces mental fatigue and increases consistency. Life becomes less about fighting yourself and more about following a system you trust. Failure with small disciplines is not catastrophic. It is correctable. Missing one day does not erase progress unless it becomes a pattern. The key is returning quickly without self-judgment. Perfection is not required. Persistence is. Small disciplines allow room for humanity while still encouraging forward motion. Ultimately, small disciplines reshape identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who practices. You stop waiting for motivation and start relying on structure. Over time, these minor actions alter how you think, how you respond, and what you believe is possible. The transformation feels gradual, almost unnoticeable at first, but it continues relentlessly, turning ordinary days into the foundation of extraordinary change through consistent, intentional behavior repeated long enough to redefine who you are and what your life produces. Adversity is often misunderstood because it arrives uninvited and feels disruptive, uncomfortable, and unfair. Most people instinctively treat hardship as a punishment or a sign that something has gone wrong. But adversity is not a signal to stop, it is a signal to learn. When viewed correctly, difficulty becomes instruction, not incarceration. The difference between people who grow stronger and those who remain stuck is not the amount of adversity they face, but how they interpret it. When adversity is seen as a prison, the mind looks for escape. It asks who is to blame, why life is unfair, and when the pain will end. This mindset creates emotional stagnation because all energy is spent resisting the situation instead of understanding it. Resistance hardens frustration, and frustration clouds judgment. The individual feels trapped, powerless, and reactive, which reinforces the sense of confinement even when opportunities for growth exist. When adversity is seen as a classroom, the questions change. Instead of asking why this is happening, the mind asks what this experience is teaching. Instead of focusing on loss, it focuses on development. This shift does not remove pain, but it gives pain a purpose. Purpose transforms suffering into strength because it reframes difficulty as temporary and meaningful rather than permanent and pointless. Adversity exposes weaknesses that comfort hides. When life is easy, habits remain untested, character remains unchallenged, and potential often stays dormant. Pressure reveals where discipline is lacking, where thinking is flawed, and where emotional control needs refinement. These revelations are uncomfortable, but they are invaluable because growth requires awareness. You cannot improve what you refuse to examine. Challenges also force adaptation. Skills that were once optional become necessary. Creativity sharpens when resources are limited. Resilience develops when quitting is no longer an option. Many capabilities people later take pride in were born in moments they once wished away. Strength rarely announces itself during comfort. It is discovered in difficulty. Adversity also clarifies priorities. When circumstances become demanding, distractions lose their appeal. What truly matters rises to the surface, and what doesn't fades away. This clarity helps people realign their actions with their values. It strips away excess and forces focus, which is essential for rebuilding and growth. Another lesson adversity teaches is patience. Growth under pressure is rarely fast. Progress may feel slow and uncertain, but endurance builds emotional maturity. Learning to continue without immediate reward strengthens inner stability. This patience later becomes an asset, allowing individuals to handle future challenges with greater composure and confidence. Hardship also develops empathy. Experiencing struggle deepens understanding of others' pain. It softens judgment and increases compassion. People who have faced adversity often become better leaders, listeners, and supporters because they understand that progress is rarely linear and that everyone carries unseen burdens. Adversity tests belief systems. It challenges assumptions about control, fairness, and ability. Some beliefs collapse under pressure, and that collapse is necessary. False beliefs cannot support long-term growth. When adversity dismantles them, it creates space for stronger, more realistic philosophies to take root. This internal restructuring is part of rebuilding oneself. Importantly, adversity does not automatically teach lessons. It offers them. Learning requires reflection and responsibility. Without reflection, pain repeats itself in different forms. Without responsibility, the same mistakes are blamed on different circumstances. The classroom only works when the student is willing to learn. Those who extract lessons from adversity do not become immune to future struggles, but they become better equipped to navigate them. Each challenge adds perspective, skill, and emotional depth. Over time, adversity stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like a demanding but honest teacher that reveals what still needs work, what has already strengthened, and what kind of person is being formed under pressure, shaping growth through experience rather than comfort. Identity is the internal image you hold of who you are, and it quietly governs every choice you make. Long before circumstances change on the outside, identity shifts on the inside. Many people attempt to improve their lives by changing their environment, income, or relationships while carrying the same self-image that created their current situation. This approach leads to frustration because external change cannot be sustained without internal alignment. What you believe about yourself determines what you attempt, what you avoid, and what you persist in. Identity influences behavior automatically. A person who sees themselves as disciplined does not constantly debate whether to act. Action feels natural. A person who identifies as careless does not feel internal resistance to neglect. Behavior follows identity because the mind seeks consistency between self-image and action. This is why temporary motivation often fails. It tries to force behavior that contradicts identity, and the mind eventually reverts to what feels familiar. When circumstances are poor, they often reflect an outdated identity rather than a lack of opportunity. Someone who identifies as unworthy may sabotage success. Someone who identifies as incapable may avoid growth. Someone who identifies as unlucky may stop trying. These identities are rarely chosen consciously. They are formed through repeated experiences, emotional reactions, and conclusions drawn over time. Once formed, they operate quietly in the background, shaping outcomes. Changing identity does not mean pretending or lying to yourself. It means consciously redefining standards, values, and expectations. Identity evolves through evidence. Each small action that aligns with a higher standard provides proof to the mind that a new self-image is valid. When you act like someone who prepares, learns, and persists, the identity of a capable person begins to feel real. Over time, this new identity becomes the default and behavior follows without force. Circumstances lag behind identity. This delay often discourages people. They change how they think and act, but do not see immediate results, so they revert to old patterns. What they fail to understand is that the internal shift must stabilize before external change becomes visible. Roots grow before branches appear. Identity must solidify before circumstances can sustain improvement. Identity also shapes what you tolerate. What you accept in relationships, work, health, and self-discipline is determined by what you believe you deserve. When identity upgrades, tolerance for dysfunction decreases. You no longer negotiate with habits that undermine growth because they no longer match who you believe you are. This creates natural boundaries and stronger self-respect. Another critical aspect of identity is language. The way you describe yourself reinforces self-image. Saying, "I am not good at this," strengthens limitation. Saying, "I am learning," keeps identity flexible. Language either locks you into a fixed identity or allows evolution. Small shifts in self-description can create space for growth without internal resistance. Identity change also affects long-term vision. People act in alignment with who they think they will be. If future identity feels unrealistic, effort feels pointless. When future identity feels believable, discipline feels meaningful. This is why rebuilding begins with deciding who you are becoming rather than obsessing over what you want to achieve. Importantly, identity is not defined by past mistakes unless you allow it to be. Past behavior explains where you have been, not who you must remain. Growth requires separating actions from identity while still taking responsibility. You acknowledge mistakes without allowing them to define you. This distinction allows improvement without shame. As identity strengthens, circumstances begin to rearrange. Decisions improve, habits stabilize, and opportunities are recognized instead of ignored. Life starts to reflect the internal standard being practiced. The shift feels subtle at first, but it becomes consistent. Who you are becoming pulls your circumstances in a new direction, aligning results with identity through repeated choices rooted in self-perception rather than external pressure. Consistency is often overlooked because it lacks drama. It does not create instant results, emotional highs, or visible breakthroughs in the short term. Yet it is the most reliable force behind lasting change. Intensity feels powerful because it creates momentum quickly, but momentum built on intensity alone is fragile. When energy drops or circumstances shift, intense effort collapses. Consistency, on the other hand, survives fluctuation because it is grounded in routine rather than emotion. Many people rely on bursts of motivation to move forward. They work hard for a short period, feel productive, then disappear when life becomes demanding. This cycle creates frustration because effort is repeatedly wasted. Consistency prevents this pattern by replacing emotional decision-making with structured behavior. Instead of asking how you feel, you act because the action is scheduled, expected, and practiced. Consistency builds reliability within yourself. When you show up repeatedly, even in small ways, you develop trust in your own ability to follow through. This self-trust is essential for growth. Without it, goals feel uncertain and effort feels risky. With it, action becomes natural because you know you will continue even when conditions are imperfect. Intensity often leads to burnout because it demands more than can be sustained. It pushes the body and mind beyond balance, creating cycles of overexertion and withdrawal. Consistency respects limits. It focuses on what can be maintained rather than what can be forced. This approach allows progress to continue without exhausting motivation or willpower. The power of consistency lies in accumulation. Small efforts repeated daily create outcomes that large efforts done occasionally cannot match. Skills improve, habits solidify, and understanding deepens through repetition. Each consistent action strengthens neural pathways, making future actions easier. What once required effort becomes automatic. This automation frees mental energy for growth rather than maintenance. Consistency also removes dependence on external conditions. You do not wait for the perfect time, the right mood, or ideal circumstances. You act within reality as it is. This adaptability allows progress even during stress, uncertainty, or disruption. Life rarely provides uninterrupted focus, and consistency thrives in imperfect environments. Another advantage of consistency is clarity. When actions are repeated, feedback becomes clear. You can identify what works and what does not because patterns emerge. Inconsistent effort produces confusing results, making improvement difficult. Consistent effort reveals cause and effect, allowing refinement instead of guesswork. Consistency strengthens identity. Repeated behavior shapes self-image. When you consistently act in alignment with your values, you begin to see yourself as dependable, disciplined, and capable. This identity reinforces future consistency, creating a self-sustaining loop. Intensity may create temporary confidence, but consistency builds lasting self-respect. Progress through consistency often feels slow, which causes many people to abandon it prematurely. They mistake lack of immediate results for lack of effectiveness. In reality, consistency works quietly. Its impact becomes visible only after enough repetitions have accumulated. This delayed gratification requires patience and trust in the process. Consistency also protects against failure. When effort is spread over time, mistakes become manageable. One setback does not erase progress. You simply continue. Intensity magnifies failure because so much effort is invested in a single attempt. When it fails, discouragement follows. Consistency allows learning without emotional collapse. Ultimately, consistency outperforms intensity because it aligns with how growth actually happens. Growth is incremental, layered, and reinforced through repetition. It is not built through heroic effort, but through dependable action. By choosing consistency, you choose sustainability, clarity, and resilience. Progress becomes inevitable not because you push harder, but because you refuse to stop, allowing steady effort to quietly outperform sporadic intensity through commitment to daily action over emotional bursts. As we come to the end of this message, remember this: rebuilding yourself is not a single decision, it is a lifelong commitment. It is the quiet choice to take responsibility instead of making excuses, to upgrade your thinking instead of blaming circumstances, and to practice small disciplines even when no one is watching. It is choosing to learn from adversity rather than be defined by it, choosing to become someone stronger on the inside before expecting change on the outside, and choosing consistency over short bursts of effort. Nothing you want is out of reach if you are willing to grow into the person who can handle it. Your past does not disqualify you. Your present does not limit you, and your future is not decided by chance, but by the standards you live by from this moment forward. Every day offers you the opportunity to rebuild one thought, one habit, one decision at a time, and those choices will quietly shape a life you can be proud of. I wish you the courage to start, the discipline to continue, and the patience to trust the process. Good luck on your journey of rebuilding yourself, and thank you for your time, your attention, and your willingness to grow.